When someone mentions watching The Hobbit, your mind will naturally go to the Peter Jackson trilogy, given its relatively recent release, and now infamous place in the public consciousness. A few people may think about the Rankin Bass animated film that aired back in 1977, whose existence was further enhanced by The Minstrel of Gondor and his legendary song,
Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom.
In the later Lord of the Rings adaptation. Few people would ever bring up the 1967 adaptation, mainly because 1. It is just under 12 minutes long, and 2. Barely anyone has ever seen it, with the film considered lost media until the producer's son, Adam Snyder, uploaded the film to YouTube in 2013, 46 years after it was made. Now I'm not going to cover in detail why the film was made. Dominic Noble covers it extensively in his video, which I urge you to watch, but the TLDR was that Rembrandt Films owned the right to The Hobbit, and needed to make a full coloured film version of the book in order to keep the film rights to it. So Bill Snyder, the founder of Rembrandt, contacted his Czech-based animator Gene Deitch to make an animated Hobbit film and get it to New York to be screened within 30 days. Gene recruited his close friend, illustrator Adolf Borner, and set about creating it. It was made on time and aired to a grand audience of around 6 people taken in off the streets of New York to watch the film. Rembrandt kept the rights, and the animators, of course, earned diddly squat. This film was the only cinema adaptation of his works that aired during Tolkien's lifetime, and luckily for Gene, Tolkien never saw the work. This short film has received a barrage of criticism over the years since its release on YouTube, with some people lovingly calling the film
"This hunk of shit,"
with other people calling it an irredeemable worthless cash grab to extend the studio rights. However, I have to ask the question, is the first animated Hobbit film actually irredeemable? Well, let's examine this short film to find out. To start with, the film is called The Hobbit, but I don't remember Slag the Dragon, the Grons, or Princess Mika Milovana. Some of these are deliberate, such as Smaug becoming Slag and Gollum becoming Gloom, as this is a way to make the viewer disassociate the book from the film, and recognise that this is an entirely different piece of media. Nonetheless, that doesn't explain the new princess character, or the lack of dwarves. So what caused this? Well, the reason their existence has changed is that this 12-minute film is a slimmed down version of what Gene Deitch had scripted to do with a full-length film, with new songs and dramatic changes to the book. So what you're getting is not a slimmed down version of the Hobbit book, it is in fact a slimmed down version of the Hobbit story that Gene Deitch wanted to tell with all the changes he had intended to make, which is why some characters have zero need for their existence because their plot was just removed, such as the Watchman and Oakenshield. They were meant to have their own arcs and characterisation, but instead it was just thrown onto the scrap heap due to the time constraints. Another example is Gandalf disappearing for most of the film and not reappearing like he does in the book. The reason the director states he was okay making these changes to the source material is that it was only 4 years later that he learned to respect the integrity of the books he was adapting. Something which modern adapters are of course still learning. So the story is an awful adaptation of the book. But story is not absolutely everything in an animated film. There are other aspects, like animation. There is no animation in this film. Well, no animation in the traditional sense. Instead, there are around 35 hand-drawn pieces of art used for this 12-minute film, alongside 6 slides of text, with a top-down camera being used to create the effect of motion by moving the artwork while it is being recorded, which is basically an interesting form of stop motion, which, technically a form of animation, making my previous sentence untrue. So the entire film lives and dies with the artwork presented. And as you can see, it is gorgeous. The artwork itself was drawn by a young Adolf Borner, who would later become a world-renowned illustrator and finalist for the Hans Christian Andersen Award, and his work's quality definitely is ever present, with his childish, whimsical artwork even outclassing anime which aired over half a century later. On a tangent, something interesting I learned about Adolf Borner during my research was that he was a lifelong monarchist. Not because he believed in the institution, but because he simply believed that people's words meant more back then, and this attitude seems to have appeared in his work for this film, as he could have just produced a few pieces of cheap half-drawn artwork and used this to make the 12-minute film, as the film was always going to end up on the scrap heap, as a pointless rights extension. But instead he produced 35 brilliant illustrations, which, combined with the audio, makes the 1967 film not a good adaptation of the Hobbit story, but still a nice short story for children to enjoy. So, is The Hobbit 1967 an irredeemable, worthless cash grab? No, it isn't. You can tell from the fantastic artwork by Adolf Borner that the people behind this film tried. As if the film was meant to be a shitty cash grab, you wouldn't have had such amazing artwork and effort spent on the film in the ridiculously short time they had to make it. And no doubt if they had been given time to make the full film, it would have been a good animated film. Just not a good adaptation of the Hobbit book. I have linked the film in the description below, and I insist you give it a watch, as if you like art, you will enjoy the film, and if you don't like it, well, there are worse things to waste 12 minutes on.